Cheers.
Hello and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge officially for season 2023. And geez, the off-season has been long and arduous with BBL SuperCoach, well, for me anyway, failing to fill the void. But Liam, it's good to be back. And we've refreshed ourselves with a catchy new intro song, courtesy of none other than Jack Black. So on the tunes, I don't know what it's actually called. It's the electric version of the sax, I think it is. Welcome, by the way.
Yes, it was thank you. It was, and you know, it's refreshed, but I think we're still bringing a lot of the tried and true things that we've had in the podcast coming back. It's not all new.
No, exactly. New. It's got both of us, old faces, old voices. Unfortunate for some, whoever tune in, the suckers that tune in. But something that is new, which I'm not sure, we might make some more, but as you can see here, if you're watching us on YouTube, is the exclusive SuperCoach Edge t-shirt, which I've got one variant of, and Liam, you've got the other one.
Yes, the
there
other
it is, a nice little, the one just on the heart, Just,
where it belongs.
You wear it on your heart, and we roll through all things SuperCoach. As Brett Kirk would say, speaking from the heart.
And to speak from your heart, you need to have courage.
But of course, for those of you tuning in for the first time, welcome. You can find us littered across your social channels via, of course, YouTube. Simply search SuperCoach Edge, and don't forget to subscribe, as people that are tuning in for the first time would know that gag from last year. But make sure to subscribe to be notified of when our content drops from week to week. On Twitter, at SuperCoach_Edge. You can find myself at DamoJ88 and yourself. Now, Liam, we are using an old run sheet template here, but I assume this is the updated one. Is it at L_Evans_95?
I think so.
I'm going to assume it is because it rolls off the tongue compared to your. For those of you tuning in for the first time, there was a bit of an ongoing.
Oh, that is the old one.
It is the old one. Okay.
The new one is at Liam Evans _95.
At Liam, I see. Oh, okay. We've both updated the run sheet at the same time. Well, that's probably the reason why I was getting choked up as I was rolling through the handles there.
You did it quite well, though.
I did. Quite well. That's because I had a bit of practice from last year when I was fumbling and stumbling. But anyway, you can find us also on Facebook. Just search SuperCoach Edge, and Instagram, SuperCoach Edge. And we also have started a, what do the kids call it? TikTok. I think that's the channel. We've ventured on there, and we will be pumping out a few shorts, reels, all those sort of things. So feel free to follow us on all those channels. Now, Liam, for the people that are tuning in, now is the first edition in a range of pre-season episodes to come, where we'll be taking a deep dive into the all-important midfield on this occasion, breaking it down player by player, which of the Premos present the most value is the first question we asked ourselves. Who presents the most upside? Which mid-prices could be on the cusp of a breakout year? And which rookies are we keeping an eye on before we see any exposed form in the preseason? And if you're watching us on YouTube, and we recommend you do so for the fancy new player graphics, making it an absolute treat for the eyes and the ears, for both. It's almost like a sensory overload, I think you'd probably call it.
It is.
Which is the reason why I'm wearing no pants, Liam, like usual, like 2022. New year, same old me. But we'll also list on YouTube in the form of chapters, the relevant time codes for the discussion times on each of the players in the description below the video, making it easier to navigate. So we are, after all, discussing 34, that's right, 34 players in total. So it's going to be super helpful for that. So jump on YouTube, check us out, subscribe, and you can click on the time codes and it'll actually jump to that player that's, you want to hear us having a bit of a yarn about. So Liam, without further ado, boo-boo, let's jump into it.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Must probably say from the get-go, you'll hear us referencing, phrases about, true value, true price. So with a lot of these guys, we've actually gone through when we've formulated a bit of a formula, I guess you could probably call it, from the combined 3-year average of players, really. And I've put in a little bit into a little bit of a run sheet and stuff, and hopefully that comes in handy down the track. And actually, we might even offer it potentially as a part of our Patreon offering as a SuperCoach Edge Almanac. So the reason behind this thinking of, true value, true price, looking at the 3-year combined average of players is the fact that there are certain players, especially some reliable Premos, which have had a down year. Yet if you look at their averages across the 2 seasons prior to that, indicate a more consistent form line of a high average. So taking this into account, we've assumed that's obviously the one down year, with it being 2022, is an outlier, and thus is a way to work out whether the starting price in 2023 of a player is value in terms of being underpriced or overpriced. So if their 2022 average lines up with their combined 3-year average, their value is on par. If their combined average is above what their 2022 average is, they are overpriced. And if their combined average is below their 2022 average, they're deemed overpriced. So there's a lot of underpriced, overpriced averages. Your head's probably in a spin. So that's fair enough there. But we're going to be providing some examples with some players that we're about to have a chat about to give you a little bit of a better idea. So hopefully that solidifies as we go through each of these players. So Liv, do you want to kick us off?
Let's kick off. Let's start our discussion of the midfield. We'll kick off with, I reckon, some tried and true Premos, some top tier talent. And I think we'll go down in maybe price order, I reckon.
Yep. Yeah, that probably makes more sense.
Give us a bit of order to us. Makes most sense. So,
order!
We know who's going to be up first. And that is from the Crows, Rory Laird, 703.9K. Absolutely eye-wateringly high price there. With a value, in terms of value, he's obviously top priced. You're not getting much. This is a hard thing to say. You're not getting much value, but you are getting quality. So you're going to pay for what you get with Rory Laird. He's not a bargain by any stretch of the imagination. No. But he is top quality talent. One thing I do just quickly want to raise, and I haven't looked at the numbers, and I might do this in some future podcasts. For a future podcast, maybe on strategy, but going to fly off the cuff. I've seen stats for AFL fantasy, the top 3 highest scorers. So there's been this consistent thing across the last few years. The top 3 highest scorers for like 2021, in 2022, they had a drop off of about 10% for their scores. This is for fantasy. Wow. So I haven't looked into it for SuperCoach, but it would be interesting to see the similar
correlation,
a similar sort of correlation. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll do some working out on those numbers when I get a chance, and I'll come back with you. So that's one thing that does raise my concerns for Rory Laird. There obviously are a few queries around him. Will the return of Sloan impact him? I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Potentially.
I'd probably say probably not, but there is potential. And also you've got Sam Berry. He could take another step up in his development, and that could lead to, points being stolen from Laird. He does, however, have a set role in the Crows engine room now compared to pre-2021. And with his performance, I can't see why you wouldn't want him to stay in that mid position and let him have that free reign. One thing to keep in mind is obviously his bye. It is in round 14, which is the 3rd bye. So he could be a bit of a target to pick up. I think he could probably, I personally, he's currently in my draft team, but I think I've got him in there just because he costs so much. At 703.9K, I was like, get him in, and then I can always downgrade him to someone else and have some cash left over. Yep. So I think he's going to be probably, by the time the season starts, I can't see him in my side. And I think I'll be looking to save some money, save some cash, and then hope that he does drop in price with some early lower scores below that average, and then I can pick him up a bit cheaper, maybe closer to his buy. But otherwise, I don't think it's a bad pick though to take him. But but probably not something that I will be doing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you've said there. On top of those guys you mentioned as well, there's Ben Keys as well. And then there was, what's his name? The brother, Matt.
Crouch.
Crouch. Sorry, I forgot his name because he's just not in the Crows lineup anymore. He's a shadow of his former self. He's on the sidelines more than he is on the field. And, who knows? He might have a turnaround in fortunes and take a spot in the midfield as well, which means more rotations, less points. But I think, as you said, with Roy Laird, he's tried and tested. Everyone knows what he delivers. Absolute gun. You'd if you're going for him, I think it's a solid pick. But I think, I'm in the same camp as you. I think I'm happy to save more money than spend, which is quite funny because this next guy we're about to chat about is someone that I'm saying is a lock and load, and he's only $4K. Actually, he's $4,100 cheaper. So not much difference, but he's probably someone that we've lent on so often, and it is the pig himself. Oink oink! It is Clary the Pig Oliver, and he's priced at $699,800. And in terms of value, I mean, like Laird as well, he's probably priced on par with expectations, and you're going to get the quality that you pay for, so no issues there. In terms of his buy, shares the same buy as Rory Laird with round 14. So if you don't start with him, he could potentially be a trade-in option around about that point. Although I couldn't imagine starting 14 rounds or 13 rounds without having Clary Oliver in my team. And then in terms of the queries and upside, and you'll see here, we're going through each of the players and talking about their value, what their buy is, queries / upside, as well as the verdict as well from both of us. So in terms of queries and upside, with Clary, one of the more durable players, so no qualms there. And he actually missed his first game in seasons due to an injured thumb in 2022. And if anything, the inclusion of another quality ruck in Brodie Grundy, you got to remember him. He's kind of flew under the radar, I think, a bit now at the moment. And it's going to serve him well in terms of clearances and benefit him in terms of contested possessions, everything else as well at the coalface. So with that in mind, and what we know about Clary, an absolute pig when it comes to fantasy and SuperCoach, just meet him at the trough and just get on your knees and start just chomping away with him. Roll around in the dirt and the mud. He's one that I'm locking in. He was actually he's actually the second player that I locked in. I'll let you know who the first one is that's coming up shortly. You'll probably guess who it is. But yeah, he's someone that I love. I've started over the years, and lock and load I think is the verdict that I've got.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. I think not only do you have, I think the Gawn and Grundy factor is massive there. He's got two such high quality ruckmen that are going to just be feeding him the ball. And we'll talk about the Gawn Grundy combination later, because I think that has other implications on players. The only question I do have is whether is probably Grundy just having to settle into that midfield as well. But I'm sure that would not be too big an issue. Especially maybe early on it might be, but I think it'll be ironed out pretty quickly. And I think, Oliver's a lock and load. I think he's definitely on my side. And I can't see him moving out of there. Now moving on, we got Lachie Neale, 676,200. And he's probably priced appropriately as compared to his output for 2022 when he was severely underpriced and we all started him and it was great. This year I think he's probably more realistic, more appropriate to his actual value. He has the buy in round 12, which I got hiccups, which is the first buy. So you could bring him in as an upgrade target in that second week of the buys. And one thing to note, just quickly, there's actually 4 buy rounds this year, as opposed to the 3. So the second buy also only has two teams, Geelong and Gold Coast. I don't know why it's been set up this way. I haven't looked into it. So it'll be interesting to see one from a SuperCoach perspective, whether that plays out the way that I think it was Port and the Suns when they used to have that China game.
Yeah.
How they used to be a full rotation. It wasn't a best 18 in that round. It'll be interesting to see whether they do something similar for that round or what happens, but just something to keep in mind. So there is value when we talk about some other players where it might be worth starting them purely because they're not Geelong and Gold Coast players aren't going to be affected by the buys in the same way, or aren't going to affect our teams in the same way. But anyway, so basically based off his buy, you could bring him in as an early upgrade target in that second week. The queries and the upside, the big one I reckon is Josh Dunkley. What impact does he have in that Brisbane lineup? I think that's the big question that I have. What about Ashcroft? Obviously, NEALE also suffers from a tag at times, so that's another factor. But in saying that, does Dunkley coming in take attention away from him and towards Dunkley instead? So does that free locking NEALE up? It's all a bit. I think it's a bit up in the air.
Yeah.
I think he hasn't been. I think for his price, he's a bit overpriced for a player that is so susceptible to a tag. He does have that ability to score really highly, but I personally think there's better value elsewhere, and I'd probably be looking to maybe target him early on if he's hopefully his price drops a bit, and I can target him early on. That's probably where I'm at. He's not in my side.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very, very much similar as well. I won't delve into it too much, but you've covered off most of it there. But yeah, talking about value and lack thereof, he's combined 3-year average is 118.96 compared to his average in 2022 is 122.8. So he's priced at 4
probably
points
slightly overs.
So he's probably should be around about that. Around about 660, 655-ish, thereabouts. So he's probably 20K too expensive, I think, at the moment. And yeah, like you said, you could probably bring him in as an upgrade target in that second week after he has the first set of buys. It's going to be super handy to bring in someone of his quality as well early on. So keep that in mind. And this next guy is someone that we both love, Liam, and we released a photo of him during the preseason, looking absolutely ripped. It just blew me away. It blew me away.
Yeah.
And it is Took Miller, the Tuk, the running man Miller, and he's priced at 662.4K. In terms of value, he's great value, given his output is on par with LAIRD and at times eclipses him, and he's 40K cheaper than LAIRD. So putting that into perspective is an absolute bargain. And with that assurance of consistency comes that VC and C option, which is super crucial from week to week, as we know. In terms of the buy, he does have the round 13 buy, which is the second buy. And like you mentioned with NEALE there, or previous to that, Gold Coast and Geelong only have that buy there. So going to be great cover for the other weeks and shouldn't really upset your structure there. And I think everyone should have Took Miller that aside, but that's just a little bit of a cherry on top as well. In terms of queries and upside, not many queries really. As I said, looking super fit, super ripped. Geez, I wish I had his physique. What a man. What a man. This is probably delving into a different sort of podcast here, bit of man love. But yeah, he's awesome. We know what he can produce, and he's got no competition for spots either. Young side at Gold Coast.
Yep.
Even though there's an uprising of the likes of Anderson and Rowell and the like, doesn't matter. He's leading the midfield. He's leading the charge. Verdict is lock and load, and especially with his buy, you can't go too wrong there.
Exactly. I saw that photo, and he was first picked based off that.
I was going to say, what did you feel?
First picked in my side. Again, I don't know if this is the right podcast for that.
No, it's probably not.
But first picked. And when I saw the buy situation, I can't see why you wouldn't pick him. And look at NEALE, who's priced, 14K ish more. And I can't see why you would pick. Like, I just took Miller's the better option. In my eyes, no competition for spots. He's looking fit as hell. Only just missed out on a Brownlow as well. Very, very close. Hopefully that spurs him on for another big year this year. I just think, there's just too much upside in terms of there's too much upside in terms of strategy behind him, like the VCC option and the buys that just, I think, drag him over the line.
Yep.
So far past the line, in fact, that he is just the first picked, as I said.
He's in a different stratosphere. Yep.
Exactly. Moving on, we've got Callum Mills priced at 642.4K. Now, his value, again, is on par with expectations. He provides a bit of a pod option, potentially. He's generally a bit overlooked given he is sandwiched between the likes of, Miller, Bont, MACRAE, sort of in that middle, in between that price packet, and probably some more proven players, I want to say, SuperCoach wise.
Yeah.
His buy is in round 12, which is obviously the first buy, and again, could be an early upgrade target for you there. In terms of the queries and the upside, I guess, he has been thrown into defense at times, and if a key injury presents in-game, this could be something that occurs and potentially persists season long, which could put a bit of a dent in his scoring, given he is the probably most productive as a mid, really. But I think as well, I think we looked at it a little bit last year, and obviously we can't forecast his scores this year, but last year we saw a bit of volatility in his scoring. He had really high scores, but he also had quite low scores, and obviously that averages out. So you can't really necessarily look at the averages. You actually need to look at the max and the min to actually get a bit of an understanding of where his scoring's at. I mean, obviously, if you're playing for rank, it's probably not the end of the world because, as I said, the average is what you're going to get across all the weeks. But if you are playing for leagues, for instance, that volatility could be a little bit hurtful for your league matches, I guess. So for me, if you're one for pods, maybe he's a genuine primo pod, I will say. I think there's better value elsewhere. But again, it's probably better value elsewhere, but it's not going to be the pod status. So if you are into a pod, Callum Mills is probably not a bad option for you.
Yeah, totally agree there. And just talking about the 3-year average, he's averaging across the past 3 years 110.1, and his average in 2022 is 116.7. So slightly inflated compared to what his output is over the last 3 years on average. But it's also another interesting thing to note is the end. We always talk about the start price of players from previous years, but his end price in 2022 was 575.3. So he actually started at 612.1. He reached a maximum of 686.4 and then dipped down to 575.3. And then his starting price is 642.4. So, I mean, like you were saying there, his prices do fluctuate. He's got that standard deviation that does tend to waver a fair bit. He has those massive games, like he had a 167 against your mob in the Dons. And then the very next week against Carlton, he was 102. So I don't know, like it depends as well what you're going for. If you're going for league matches and prize leagues and stuff, from week to week, head-to-head matchups and stuff, that could actually kill you at times. He's a really nice player to have, and yes, he does average quite well across the course of the season with that 116.7 last. I should start saying last year now because it is 2023, but it's still throwing me. But yeah, like it's something to factor in, I think, as well when we talk about these players, who's consistent across the week to week throughout the year, and who are those guys that are like Callum Mills that kind of are a bit up and down. But moving on. Sorry,
just quickly on that. Like, I think the point is, he scored a 214, he scored a 167, but equally he scored a 60 and a 70. So he has that volatility. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of his scores were below 100 as well. So that's, I guess, where I think the volatility comes in. You're not getting someone who is just consistently scoring well necessarily.
Yep, totally get you there. Moving on to the Bont man, Marcus Bontempelli. He is priced at 639.5k. In terms of value, probably on par with what expectations are. 3-year average is 117.3 and he's averaged 116.1 for 2022, so virtually identical. In terms of the buy, he does have the fourth buy in round 15. And then looking at the queries and upside, so the main query with Bont over the past few years actually is the fact that he's been played up forward at times and saw him actually have the DPP eligibility as a forward mid. But that in itself does put a dent in his scoring ceiling. We know it can be really high at times, but then you've got to look at as well, is there potential that he's going to spend more time in midfield? And there's a few indications as to why it's sort of pointing towards yes, because first of all, we have Josh Bruce returning for the Dogs. So he could potentially take up that spot up forward as a key forward. And also factoring in the second year development of Sam Darcy as well as another tall option up there. But the one alarming thing is the fact that just looking at his CBA differential is he's dropped from 73% CBAs in 2021 down to 58% in 2022.
Oof.
And that was off the back of him being pushed forward a bit more, more around the ground, sometimes on the wing, not as much as other guys we'll talk about with Jack MACRAE. But the big factor now is that he no longer has Josh Dunkley there, first and foremost, but then also he doesn't have Lockie Hunter there, who's now at the Ds. He probably impacts the wing role a bit more, but without Dunkley there in the engine room predominantly, will that mean that he's required more in the midfield? You'd think so, given, like I just said, Josh Bruce up forward, Sam Darcy development up forward, Ugle Hagen, the like. I think off the back of that, he's probably, of all years, he is the one guy that I'm strongly considering starting. I haven't started him probably for about 4 seasons now. It was actually the COVID season I think I started him, and he went to shit, and then I traded. I think you might have done the same thing. He went to shit, I traded him, then he came good. So I haven't forgotten that one. But yeah, this is the one season that I'm actually considering starting him since then, and that's for all those reasons. So in terms of the verdict for me, great value, upside is there for a breakout season off the back of that. So yeah, he's got his foot in a spot in my midfield.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm considering Bont for the first time in a while. And yeah, I guess I think there's a stat that I want to talk about in a future episode. Oh,
I like it. In our strategy episode, perhaps.
In our strategy episode, I think, and I might talk a little bit about reasons why you would want to select him. But in essence, just I have a good feeling about Bont. And I think that is why you should potentially look at him. I think there's good value there. I think there's a bit of upside that we can look into, we can expect from him.
No worries. Well, I'll pick up this next guy, Liam, because there is a guy after this guy. So many guys. That is more relevant to you because he does play Fuel Mob. But first up, we have Jack MACRAE at 634.4k. And like Bont, he is actually super value. Underpriced, almost massively, I'll say, because his 3-year average is 121.5, but he is priced, obviously, on his 2022 average of 115.2. And looking at his, obviously, those averages for the prior 2 years, he averaged 128.6 and 121, which suggests 2022 was just an outlier. So like I spoke of from the start, these are the sort of numbers you have to look at. But there is a reason as to why he did drop in average. And I'll get into that shortly with queries. In terms of the buy, he does have the round 15 buy, obviously he shares it with Bont. Fourth buy, and looking at the queries a bit deeper, an upside. I suppose upside first and foremost. Like we mentioned, we'll delve into that in a bit greater detail with our strategy episode, but upside is no Dunkley, which means that does help his scoring output. However, he has been played on the wing at times, which is part of the reason why he dropped in average. And now without Hunter at the Dogs, he's now at the Ds. Could he be marooned on the wing as a result a bit more often? Or will Bailey Smith take up that mantle? Or will there just be a rotation of players through the wing? Alarmingly, though, like Bont, his CBA has dropped from 77% to 64% in 2022 compared to 2021. So there's a few alarming stats there, but there is reason that he could potentially turn it around. But I'm not as confident as what I am with Bont, just because Bont is Bont, and there's so much going for him on the forward front. But I won't go into too much detail because we'll keep that for a future episode. Rolling through quickly in terms of the verdict, I think, the 2022 and 21 averages are a better reflection of his true output overall and the heights he could once again reach in 2023. I will say I do love this. It's a bit of an each-way bet. I love this pick, although it is fraught with danger because of that wing spectre looming over him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a ballsy move, I want to say. It's a ballsy move to an extent, because I think you're right. Looking at his sort of longer term average, he's severely underpriced. But there's just something about, I think, his scores from last year that kind of make it hard to pick him personally. Like, it's sort of that exposed, it's that most recent form in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's really going to come down to his role. I think if he can get back into the middle, I think it's definitely worth looking at picking him up. So maybe it's one that I will have to look at the preseason before I make a genuine call. But at this stage, I think I'm going to bypass him.
Yep.
But equally, I can see why you would pick him up. So it's one of, again, each way bet.
He's a watch.
I think he's a watch, definitely a watch.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got from my mom, Saki Merrett, 617.5K. I had a sliding doors moment last year. Priced 100. I could pick between Parish and Merrett. Merrett was, I think, 100K less. Decided to pick up Parish because he had, better scoring output at the time, more consistent. Parish then got injured in that game, and Merrett went on to kill it.
Yep.
So I feel burnt. By my own man. But anyway, onto the value.
The burn man.
Now, by my own man. Value. I've got the question marks here. It's a hard one, because I've looked into these stats a little bit, and I'll touch on it a little bit later. But he did come home after the bye like a freight train. There was 5 weeks in a row where he scored above 130. So he went off his nut. But I just don't think the value is there with Merrett at the start of the season. But I think you could probably grab him cheaper after his bye. So someone that I'd probably look to upgrade to potentially buy in round 14. So it is the third buy. Now the query is an upside. Now, a trend that we've seen over the last 2 years with Merrett, and probably a bit further back as well, is he tends to increase his average later in the season, particularly after the bye. So you actually see that he scores better in the second half of the year. So it's like he has a slow start and then he builds. And that was something I think I raised last year when I was talking about Merrett versus Parish, was that Merrett had a tendency to pick up his average. So you were going to get higher scores. So don't look at he had a slow start to the season. Same thing happened in 2021. The same thing happened in 2022. And then he picked up his scoring, as we saw. So if this trend continues, I think it's probably something that you can probably grab him cheaper, because he's priced at, sorry, I actually don't know what he's priced at off the top of my head.
617.5?
617. Oh yeah, sorry, 617.5. So I think that'll come down, and you ever grab him probably sub 500, sub 600, sorry. Maybe 590 something. And then you'll hopefully come home like a freight train like you did this year. So hopefully, I think there's value in him later in the season, potentially, if the trends are going to continue. I mean, you could also raise questions over his role with a new coach. I don't think he's going to get dropped out of a midfield. But there is obviously potentially a new midfield mix, different rotations I'd expect. I'll touch on that a bit later when I talk about Darcy Parish. So he's one that I'd want to at least see in the preseason, but personally, I would be, in terms of the verdict, I would wait for his bye to pick him up.
Yeah, you're spot on there. I was just like, as you were chatting about him, I was comparing compare the last 2 seasons, and literally it is round 14. Round 14 after his bye, and round 14 he has a shit one or substandard below 100. From then on, hundreds galore. Like 2021, absolutely insane. And he lifted his average. This is in 2021. Lifted his average from 109.9 to finish with 115, and then in 2022, at round 14, he was 103 and then finished with 112. So lifted his average by 9 points over, what's that, nine rounds. Absolutely insane. Just absolutely bananas. Like scores of 140, 147, 136, 133, 140. And like he even was able to dip down, have a couple of shit ones with 71 and 73, and then finish off with a 150 against the Tigs. Like just craziness.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. So that's why I think that's why I do raise him as someone that you wait for. Just because I think he'll potentially, even if he doesn't drop in price, you're not using your money on a player that's sort of scoring averagely, I want to say. Like he's scoring okay, nothing to, write home about. But then he comes home like that freight train when he's going to lift his average and hopefully be priced at the very least a little bit cheaper than he is now. And then you can pick up those really good scores. So that's kind of the strategy there with Merrett in my mind. I'm going to actually, I'm going to jump into the next guy because
I was about to say
I'm going to let you talk about the guy after that.
Well spotted.
Yeah. So Andy Brayshaw. Actually, you probably could talk about this guy too. You're a big fan. 615.6K value. Again, I feel like he's a bit like the Mills. I feel like he's probably the changing of the guard to an extent.
Yeah.
Probably on the younger side. So I think he hasn't got the runs on the board that he does not. He doesn't have the runs on the board, but I think that there's the other players that we all kind of look to, and I think Brayshaw is sort of the next. He'll be the ones that we're looking to in the future, a bit more assuredly. But he's not quite there yet. So he could be a bit of a pod and overlooked for some of the other options, especially with the next guy on the list, considering he's 4K cheaper. His buy he's the first buy in round 12. And the query is an upside for him. He did draw a tag at times and clearly struggled, which does obviously limit his ceiling overall. So that's one thing. Can he sort of push through and beat that tag so that he can have those consistent scores? The other thing, I guess, is will Freo improve further and will that help him lift his average higher as well? So will just sort of the nature of the team growing also help him grow his score? He did finish 11th in 2022 for top scoring mids. So it's kind of a question of who does he push out? Like of the list that we've spoken about, it's hard to see who actually sort of who's going to push out. Potentially, maybe I don't know. It's a hard one. I mean, it's so early. There's no form. I'm probably not going to start him, but I'm also not against starting him. So it's a bit of an each way bet there. Kind of a you do you boo. But yeah, I think that's just where I stand. I've never been a massive fan of Brayshaw, but I don't really have a reason for it. It's kind of just a gut feel. I don't think I feel super assured in him yet.
Yeah, he finished, I think it was 9th, potentially 9th, top 9th. Yeah, he was 9th. 9th mid, most scoring mid overall.
Okay.
12 points behind Track, who was in 8th spot. So he was close enough to being one of the best starting mids, considering there's 8 spots in your midfield, but starting spots it is. But yeah, for me, like I owned him in 2022, and the main thing for me that was frustrating is early in the year, he's whilst his floor was big, his ceiling wasn't big at all. And it was really hurting me. There's a lot of fluctuations in his scores. And really, it wasn't until what point? It would have been round 11. Round 11, he started punching out scores of, 113, 135, 134, 132. So he got a little bit more consistency. But I think among those games where he had the low numbers, he was starting to be tagged, like you mentioned. And that was one thing it's really his Achilles heel, I think, which may crop up from time to time this season yet again. So with that sort of spectre hanging over him, and the question as to who he pushes out of the top 8 mids and can he actually reach it? He was close enough last year. Yeah, I'm not so much of a fan of starting him. I didn't start him last year, but brought him in around about a time that he was coming good, and then he sort of had a few speed humps and stuff. But I would opt to look elsewhere at this stage. Just talking about in terms of value, I don't think he's got much value. Last year was his first real breakout sort of season, I guess you could call it. So with that, without any assurance with, historical data backing it up long term, I think, I'll look elsewhere. But one guy I think that I'm going to be looking at rather closely as an alternative option is this next guy, Liam. And it is the Helicrypta, as we call him, Patrick Cripps, because early in the season anyway, he was taking us to the moon, wasn't he? Well and truly,
he was. He was
until he broke down, ran out of fuel, and crash landed. But then he came good because he won the Brownlow. Don't know how, but he did. Kudos to him. But Paddy Cripps, he is priced at 6.11 on the dot. In terms of value, probably priced on par with expectations, I think, with his output. In terms of his buy, he does have that 4th buy in round 15. And looking through the queries and upside, so the big query, you can't overlook this, is he's going to be missing his right-hand man, my right-hand man, actually, the man that should be sitting right beside me, or probably on my lap, because I love the man so much. I was about to call him Paddy Walsh, Sam Walsh, for the first month or so of the season. He's going to be missing him. Unfortunately, he was suffering from the same back injury ailment, whatever you want to call it, that he was suffering, which kept him out of round 23, the all-important clash against the Pies, which we lost, unfortunately. Don't want to dig up those those memories again. But the main thing without Walsh being there is, will Cripper get further attention in the form of a tag? Mind you, he can shake them depending on who the tagger is, just given his attributes. He's such a tall player, can be pushed forward, can, be swung back. But that's the main thing that's sort of in my mind and probably holding me back from selecting him. There is an argument there without Walshy there's more points to be had. And if Carlton do improve, and I'm praying to the footy gods that we do, then potentially he could go up another notch, which is scary to think. But the verdict for me, just condensing all of it, is I don't mind him at the price, but, I think 2022 is probably a reflection of his ceiling, because he did max out in virtually every stat. I was looking at AFL tables and just looking at his stat breakdown in comparison to previous years, and he's had a career best year across the board. Although there is room to improve, believe it or not, because clangers are one thing that's holding him back when it comes to SuperCoach. Fantasy, as we know, it's not going to hurt him there. But clangers in SuperCoach is a big thing, and that did hold him back from time to time and did lower his ceiling, even though it was quite big. But if he can up again the number of goals that he's kicking, even though he had a season best, I think he kicked 20 goals 9 or something, can he go to another level? So for me, it's a genuine 50-50. I'd love to start him, but if I'm ripping my bias out of it, I would probably say I'll bypass him early on because there's a little bit of risk there. I don't see him taking his average up any further or having a consistency to maintain that price. So I can see his price coming down a bit, which you could probably jump on him at a certain point when you're upgrading. But in summary, for me, I'll be looking elsewhere, but he's very tempting.
I agree. Actually, no, I agree on the, I agree that I don't think I'll start him. I I don't think I'm not tempted by him, to be honest. I can't see him, as you said, I can't really see him pushing his average any higher. As you said, he's had career best stats basically everywhere except for his clangers. Obviously, he cleans up his clangers, that'll help. I can't necessarily see him upping his goals further necessarily.
No.
I think it'd be a big push for him. That's probably my main concern. And I think as well, again, this is just off the top of my head, but I feel like we often see a bit of a fall away from players after their Brownlow. Yeah.
That's true.
With scoring. So that also would have me a little bit worried. I don't think it's a bad pick. I think at his price is not bad. Especially when you look at sort of like maybe a Brayshaw for 4K less. I think I'd rather start a Cripps. I just can't see him. I can't see him pushing his average higher. Necessarily. And that's not to say that he won't. It's more so a case of I just think the chances of it are quite low. Like I think it's gonna be hard for him to do it. Because he's gonna have to basically have another career best season. To do that. I mean, potentially maybe playing more games would help him as well. But I suppose that doesn't help his average necessarily. But yeah, he's a tough one. I don't think I'd be picking him.
Yep. Just quickly
Personally.
before you jump into your man that's coming up next, just when we're talking about Cripper, could he go to another level? Yes, he did average 111.1, but we must remind ourselves that in 2018 and 2019, he actually averaged 119 and 117. So there is an indication there that he
There's
could
potential,
potentially lift to another level. And you'd think naturally if Carlton do improve, and they have to improve, like that's kind of what the benchmark is like from the AFL, not just internally within the club. You'd think naturally he's going to go up another level again, but it's to what extent. So I don't see him regressing. I can see him staying around about that mark, which is the main thing. But yeah, it's that query. Just if Walsh was there, I probably would think about selecting him more than what I am. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and that's a fair call. Yeah. I think I agree with that. I think it's just, he's a bit of a tough one to look at, I think. With knowing that obviously that Walsh isn't going to start alongside him. He's a tough one. But I think I prefer him to others at around this price. So if you were needing someone, he's not a bad pick. And I think at the very least, you'll probably expect him to maintain his average. And I think that's probably the most likely outcome, personally. Moving on to, your man. My man, Darcy Parish from my mob, 610.8K. Now, his price probably reflects where he is at in terms of value-ish. I don't think you're overpaying for him, but I also don't think he's a bargain at that price. Round 14, which is his third buy. Now, he was affected by injury in 2022, which did hamper his average, I think, with a couple of injury-affected games, but also a couple of poor showings as well. The questions for me, again, is this to a greater extent. I don't want to say a greater extent, but there's a new coach, and that's going to potentially affect his role. I don't think he's going to be kicked out in the midfield. I'm not suggesting that. I just think that I'd want to see what the strategy around the midfield is. I guess from an Essendon's perspective and sort of knowing Essendon a bit better, having as a supporter, I felt like in the past, last year especially, Truck had a very limited midfield rotations. So he relied on a few midfielders. Wasn't a great deal of rotations through the midfield, or they weren't really rotated well early on, I don't think. So it was kind of left to a few as opposed to sort of spreading the load, which I think had issues in a sense. So I think that has twofold. One, obviously you're in the middle for longer, which gives you more opportunity to be around the ball and around the points. But I guess equally it also increases the amount of time that you're on the ball, but also means that you're not getting that break, I guess, in a sense. But also means that you're not having to share points around as much. But with that in mind, I'd probably want to see what the Dons midfield shapes up like. I think you've got players like Setterfield coming in, Tatsis, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry, mate.
Yep, we'll go with that. Starts with a
probably
T.
got Hobbs.
His own fault.
Yeah. Hobbs coming in, playing greater role. Nick Martin, Perkins. I just think there's a lot of question marks around what the midfield looks like. Again, I'm not suggesting that Parish is not playing midfield. He'll be playing midfield. It's just how does the makeup and the sort of the mixture of all the players affect his scoring. So I think not a bad pick overall, but probably not a bargain either. And probably one that I'd want to watch early on.
Yep. No, you've summarised it nicely there. I wish I was talking about my man Walshy around about this mark as well, because it was a sliding doors moment for us, wasn't it? Like in terms of I would go for Walshy, would go for Darcy. Good old I won't call him the wilting flower, even though I just referred to it. Because he's taken his game up another notch. He's a good player in his own right. But yeah, you've summarised it nicely there. I think it's a wait and see for me. Moving on to this next guy though, and it is a player that we both love. Super high floor, super high ceiling. Had a bit of a down year in 2022, and it is Jack Steele, priced at 604.4K. In terms of value,
King Bruce has gone completely mad.
He is extreme value, extreme, super underpriced. Looking at his 3-year average is 119.4. It is priced at an average of 109.8 due to that down year last year. Should be priced closer to 660K as he was at the start of 2022. So keeping that in mind, like he's priced almost a whole 10 points lower on average than he should be. So 56K or thereabouts in terms of value. Like you just take that any day of the week. In terms of his buy, he's got the round 12 buy. Queries and upside. So main query is obviously Ross the Boss Line comes in as returns to the Saints. And I guess the Ross Line effect is really unknown at this stage. He's been out of the game for a while now, has Ross Line. We don't know the impact he's going to have on St Kilda with his game plan. As we know, when he was at St Kilda and Freo as well, he was very defensive, loved to overpossess the footy, maintain possession, all that sort of stuff. But we're going to assume that he's going to bring something different to the game, because a lot of opposition coaches are just going to assume that if he brings the same thing to the table, like he's not going to last. Like that's so outdated. So he's going to move the times, but we don't know how that's going to affect Jack Steele, if it does at all. Is it going to be slingshot footy? Is it going to be a little bit of flooding like he did back in the day? But then you've also got to look at the loss of Max King as well, a key forward. Not really going to impact him too much, but in terms of hitting up key forwards, who's going to take his place, inside 50, kicks, all that sort of stuff. A little bit of a dent, if at all. So there's not really many queries at this stage. Upside is huge. In terms of the verdict for me, like I mentioned, high floor, high ceiling, provided by his tackling prowess. Had a down year, but his average in 2021 and 2020 is I think, a true reflection of his true output. Underpriced, great value. Get on. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm just looking at his scores, and I think we all kind of looked at his year last year and kind of went, I think it was a bit down. But realistically, it was injury affected season. He played 18 games, did his shoulder. So I can't remember which game he did his shoulder. It must have been against Geelong, where he scored a 74. And I don't think he finished that match.
I remember he played through it. He went into the sidelines.
He played through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazingly.
But he was clearly hampered. Hampered. And looking he played 18 games. I think it was 13 of those were above 100. So it wasn't necessarily a poor season. Other than a 58 in round 22, his other scores were all 75 plus. And one of those included the injury. And sort of his next lowest were 87 and 93. So it wasn't a terrible season overall. So yeah, I can't see why you wouldn't want to start him because I think he's super value. So now moving on to our next option with Josh Kelly, priced at 582.3K. He is actually priced only $100 different from his 2022 starting price, which is nice value after a down year, really. Especially factoring in his 3-year average is 109.1, and he is priced at an average of 105.6. So realistically, if you think about that, he probably should be priced at around 600K. So getting about a 28 or 18K discount, which is nice. It does have the fourth buy in round 15, and obviously, when you think of Josh Kelly, we do not think of durability. But he actually played virtually a full season in 2022. And Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper are no longer there. And Leon Cameron is out.
Yeah. I was waiting for that. He's the big one. He's probably the biggest of the lot.
Yeah, the biggest out. That's the most beneficial to us. It does mean that there are more points up for grabs with great reliance on him stepping up. Will also mean that some of the other players that we'll touch on later are also good options, potentially good options for some cheaper price points. I do think he's a great value pick in terms of the verdict. He will save you money, but I probably only select him if his injury issues are behind him with no preseason setbacks. And we know that there's guaranteed CBAs, which he did lose late in the season. For me personally, I probably wouldn't start him, but I don't think he's a bad pick. But I kind of have issue with starting players that do have that injury history or durability questions. So I personally would rather start someone else at that price point. Like I think there's some others who haven't got, I guess, the scoring history, but I think are good options. And the next guy on the list that I'll pass over to you, Damon, I think is a perfect example of that.
Yep, summed it up nicely. And yeah, let's move on to this guy because he's someone that I was excited about. And then I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the lavish name, the hyphenation of it, I don't know, whatever that.
Yeah, what is hyphenation?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
maybe.
Works.
I don't know, but probably giving away who it is now we're referring to. It is Luke Davies Uniacke or Uniacke. I think it's Uniacke. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's just such an exotic name. I'd like to know the origins, but
Luke Davies. Yeah, what is it? LDU, that's what I'll call him.
LDU, that's not to be confused by UDL.
Not a UDL.
If he was a UDL though, UDL flavour, he'd be delicious because he is a delicious prospect in SuperCoach. Talking in terms of value, he is great value. So he's priced at 557.4K, but it's all about the huge upside that he comes with. Given his form in the back half of the season in 2022, I think is reflective of what he can produce in 2023. Yeah. He averaged 82% CBAs in the last 9 games of the year and averaged 113.6 in his last 10 games of the season, which I think is probably more of a true reflection of his output level overall. Compared to, I guess, what he's averaged at, like he really hit his straps. It's probably hard and probably fraught with danger at times looking at averages in isolation, but given North Melbourne were just performing like shit, for lack of a better term, the fact that he was performing as well as he did is testament, I think, to the level that he can go to on a consistent basis, I think for me anyway. Looking at his buy, he's got a round 15 buy, which is the 4th buy overall. Queries and upside. So the main queries for me are Cunnington, Will Phillips, and Wardlaw will step into the midfield, you'd think, and potentially take CBAs. But I think overall it's LDU's midfield to really, lead, given his dominance shown in 2022. The other side of the coin is Clarko. He steps in as coach. You know, it's Clarko. Clarko, a good coach, but you think of it in terms of the impact that he had on Hawthorn midfielders. You know, when Hawthorn's midfield was in its prime, North isn't in its prime, obviously, but when you're looking at youngsters taking the next step, I think this is his 4th or 5th season LDU, and traditionally players entering that sort of margin of their career is when they start to really hit their straps. Yeah. So it's all coming up Millhouse, I think, for LDU, for me anyway, looking at it from that perspective. But yeah, just looking at it with Clarko and Hawthorn, he was totally fine with the likes of Tom Mitchell and co over possessing the footy, as maintaining possession was probably the name of the game with Clarko, with his game plan. So could this help LDU even further? Could there be more over possession of the footy? All that sort of hoopla. But in terms of the verdict, looks to be a breakout contender. And if he continues where he left off in 2022, he could, I'm going to put it out there, could be the biggest bolter. It could be the next Andy Brayshaw, I guess you could say, but even more so, because I think he could be a top 10 finisher. I don't know. I'm going to make that call, but he, for me, is someone that I can see taking the next step. I'm excited.
I'm excited by him too. He's in my side. He is in my side.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of value there with him. He's someone I would have loved to have got into my side. I think we touched on him a few times in the podcast last year in the back end. He's a player I would have loved to have been able to get into my side at the time, but I couldn't. And I think he's just set to just take his game to the next level. I think he's going to continue on with that form, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great to see. Look, I know what you're saying with Cunnington, Will Phillips, and Wardlaw. They will come in and take up some CBAs. I can't see them pushing LDU out though. No. I think you're right in the sense that it's going to be his midfield in a sense. I think he's the one that you maintain in there, and then the others sort of come in as support.
Yeah, with that average as well on the back end, the last 10 games of the season, 113.6. If he maintained that over the course of the year, which is probably hard for him to do, but with that snapshot, he would have finished 8th overall in terms of top mids. So there is a bit of a sniff that he could potentially do that. Like there's a small snapshot, it's a small sample, not even half the season almost. But yeah, indications are that if he can maintain that level, recapture it this season, he could do it. I'm bullish.
Yeah.
Bullish on the ball.
Likewise. Moving on to another, probably slightly more speculative pick with Noah Anderson, 552.9K. Value-wise, he's probably on par with expectations with maybe some slight upside there. His buy is in round 13, which is the second buy, obviously in the same one as Took Miller. So that buy with Geelong. So it would be good cover across the other buy rounds and shouldn't really affect your structure too much. The questions that I guess we all probably have is, will he naturally take another step in his development heading into his 4th season? The question is, how big a jump can he make and whether he'll be able to really step up into that top 10 mid finish place, I guess. I can't see, it's the same thing as Brayshaw to an extent. Can you see him doing it? And I can't really see who he's displacing. I can't see how he's going to, because at this price, 552.9K, you're picking him as a keeper. So he's going to stay in your side the whole season. He's going to be a bit of a pod, but I don't know whether that's going to benefit you all that greatly. At that price, I'd rather look Davies Uniacke, or even a cheaper option who's next on the list. But I don't know. What's your thoughts here, Damon?
Yeah, he had too many games in 2022, looking at that in isolation anyway, where his ceiling was kind of lacking. There was a stretch from round 9 to round 15 where he failed to score a ton. Came close a couple of times, but still didn't get over the 100 mark. Although then from round 16 to round 20, four of those 5 games, he was 132, 154, 135, 105. So he really flashed his ceiling there, but then dropped back down again. So I think he's just lacking a bit of consistency, but he is showing that he could potentially reach that mark. But I just don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Gold Coast should improve as well. For that price point, I don't know. I don't see him as a sexy option like I do with LDU. Maybe it's LDU's name. I just love his name. That's just makes him a sexy option. But Noah Anderson, to me, maybe 2024. For me, I don't know. It's hard. I'm a 50-50 on the fence, and I think he's in that price range as well. If I was comparing him to LDU and this next guy, he's probably the third option for me. Because he plays that, he plays a little bit of inside, but more outside as well. Whereas LDU loves to tackle, as does this next guy. So let's move on to him, unless you've got anything else to add, Liam, with Noah?
No, that's it.
Noah's Ark?
Nothing.
No, ship him off. See you later. Fare thee well. Let's move on to the next guy, and it is Tom Green, the big bull. So he's a bit like LDU in that sense. Contested beast, priced at 534.6K, almost a mini cripper in a sense. In terms of value, great value and huge upside as well. Almost on par for me anyway in terms of LDU with that price bracket, very similar. Yeah. Can he take the next step? I think he could potentially. Get into that in a sec, but his buy is round 15, which is, of course, the fourth buy. Queries and upside. So the main queries for me, probably for everyone else out there, new coach, huzzah, no Leon Cameron, big win, big tick. But will they give him the opportunity to have, more CBAs or bulk CBAs if the stars align? I guess the main thing is that their former contested beast with Hopper is no longer there. So there is a vacancy there that he could step into. Can he fill Hopper's shoes? Hopper, mind you, injury affected, wasn't there for the past 2022 anyway, but was cropping up with a few injuries here and there, which prompted Tom Green to step into that role. Before, I think he sort of petted out a bit. Didn't really have the fitness base, I don't think. So he started like a house on fire in 2022 and then sort of fell away from there, was managed, involved in a lot of rotations as well. But the main question is, could he push for that top 10 or the top 8 spot? It's hard. It's hard because you can't really, you can go off past data to sort of predict. And his averages over the past few years as well, like he's going up and up and up. I think there's potential. I rate him behind LDU. Just because I've seen that back end form line for LDU, which gives me a bit of security, makes me feel warm, fuzzy, like all that sort of stuff. Tom Green was the opposite, started like a house on fire, fell away. He's a contested beast. That's the thing. Like, could he? Like everyone was saying that he's the mini cripper, like under 18 champs. He's going to take the step, but when's it going to be? Will 2023 be the year, Liam?
Hard to say. I mean, looking at his scores from last year, he really did start the season like a house on fire. He went 164, 106, 147, 92, 115, 108, 107, 96, 75, 102, 77, 117, 102, and then really fell away from there. But I'd love to see him take the next step. I'd just be worried. Like it's kind of as you said, it's the opposite of LDU in the sense that he started well and finished poorly. At that price, you really need to start well. If he were to go massive at the start of the season, like he started last season priced at 430K. So his 100K extra this year, 104K. After a few weeks last season, he had actually gone up from 430K by round
7?
By round 7, he was 551K.
Yeah.
So he'd gone up quite a lot.
And then dropped
Is
back down
there a
again to his starting
strategy?
price.
Then dropped down dropped down again very quickly.
The
But
433 at
what
the
I'm
end.
trying to say is there almost a sense that you can short him? Like,
Yeah.
it's a big risk. But could you get on him, hope he has an absolute blinder to start the season, he gets up maybe to 600K, and then you swap him over to someone who's a bit more of a sure bet?
Yeah, okay, I like that. Jesus, a bit of stock market talk here. This is
I don't know.
This is good.
I don't know whether I would do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't guarantee that he's going to have that. His scoring, getting up to the higher points is going to be much harder. Him making that extra 100K or even that extra 70K, he's going to need higher scores than what he probably had last year, or a higher average across those rounds. So it's going to be harder for him because obviously he's priced at 430K, so it's harder for him to get up higher in price. So it's going to be tougher, but yeah, something that I would consider, just if he's going to have that similar sort of come out of the blocks, absolutely firing, that could be a potential option. I can't see him displacing anyone out of the top 10 mids. So that would probably be my issue. And I think maybe 2024 is probably the year, another year of fitness built in. Hopefully 2024 is his year. But I'm not against picking him either.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind the risk of him, but I think if you're going to, I'd rather spend up an extra 20-ish K and pick pick LDU personally.
Yeah, he's that's the thing as well. Like there is that going for him with I spoke of it with Hopper, but also Taranto, who I forgot to mention as well. Like there's a couple of key pillars missing in the Giants' engine room. So it's almost like he's going to have to be forced to play more time in the engine room. But it's just whether or not he's fit enough to do so. Like he fell away with time on ground percentage, especially in the last month of the season where I think he's lost about 20 minutes worth of game time because he was managed that highly. In terms of CBAs and stuff, like where is he? Just having a quick squeeze. So he had the third most CBAs actually average across the year with 58%. Behind actually the most of all the midfielders, surprisingly. And it was Priest with 64% and Matty Flynn 68%. So that bodes well for him. And yeah, I mean, he's going to be given an opportunity. I think, it's whether or not he has the fitness base to really step up his game. So whether it's this year or next year. But I like that strategy as well of potentially shorting him. So jump on him if he skyrockets, and then if he looks like he's struggling in terms of fitness, a couple of months into the season, jump across to another, assured Fulham premium. It's a nice strategy. It's one that I've never heard of, so I like that. Interesting.
I don't know if I'm advocating for it
because he could potentially stay at that point as well. That's the other thing, but
yeah, we don't know. It's hard. Like I think last season made more sense to do that. Priced at 430K, he went 164, 106, and then but just before his price change, just after his price change, or the week of his price change was 147. So if you jumped on him after the first two rounds, you instantly he gained 72K after round 3, and then he gained another 22K the week after, another 22K the week after. So I think in that case it probably worked a bit better. So if he was priced around that 400K for 430. Then maybe it would work, but yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Might delve into it a bit more in terms of when we're talking about the strategy episode, which will be at the back end.
Anyway,
but let's move on to
let's move on to the Chad Warner, 532.7K. Now I was probably bullish on him, especially last year, about how he would go this year, and I think I've cooled a little bit on him. And I think that comes down to just looking at his scores. But let's have a chat about his value first. Slight value, I think, with some upside there. You really needing him to have that breakout season because he really is being picked as a keeper at this stage. His buy is round 12, which is the first buy. And he has flashed his ceiling throughout 2022 with scores of 155, 148, with 5 of his last 8 games being 100 plus for an average of 107.25, which does suggest he could again take another step in his game. He was also the highest scoring Swan in the grand final with 126 to underline his quality, and I guess also showing he can do it in the big games, but also when his side's down, like it's not necessarily that he's reliant on those around him. Like he stood up is sort of one thing that sort of I think is good to see. But the question will be, can he bust out those high scores on a consistent basis with his disposal? The one thing that's holding him back, and just quickly having a look at his scores last season, they were quite varied again, like quite a bit volatile, I want to say.
Yep.
Lower score of 51, higher score of 155. And he really, like he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scores above 100 of his 21 games. So really he was scoring just under half of his scores were, above 100. So that's something that, you really do have to consider. I mean, obviously he's going to have a sort of a natural growth in his scoring, I want to say, just by virtue of the fact that he is, getting to, building his game up. So he could be one to take a gamble on at the price. But a question again would be his ability to break into that top 10 scoring mids. He could, but I reckon 2024, like Tom Green, that's probably his year.
Yep. I like it. Yeah. No, I'm very much, we spoke of him. What's that?
Yeah. I've cooled on him. Like, I think I was quite bullish on him.
The cooler. You're the cooler.
And I definitely feel like I've taken a step back from that.
Yeah. We spoke of him during the final series, I think it was, or during the off season at some stage. And we're like, oh yeah, like, I think you mentioned him first to me, and I was like, yeah, like I'd noticed how well he performed across the finals and especially in the grand final.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably, we were both seduced off the back of that as to how well he went in that one game. A pretty important game nonetheless. But yeah, I looked at his scores as well when I was formulating my starting lineup, and I was like, I don't know. Like he seems like he's good value, could potentially take it up another notch. But yeah, consistency is the main thing with him. And then, yeah, as you mentioned as well, his disposal, which is really holding him back. So
if he was eligible, I'd pick him 100%.
Yep.
I can't do it as a midfield.
No, exactly. He's taking a valuable spot. That's the main thing for me anyway. He doesn't push anyone else out for me.
No.
Let's move on to another guy who historically has been a bit of a cornerstone when it comes to AFL fantasy and SuperCoach, and it is Tom Mitchell, who now dons the black and white for Collingwood, and he's priced at 528.6K. He's an interesting one, always is. In terms of his value, he presents as value, given he has historically averaged well above what he produced in 2022, which is, of course, a down year for him. He was 117 average in 2021 and 113 in 2020. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. He's a very interesting one. But looking at his buy, he's got the round 14 buy, which is, of course, the third one. And looking at his, I guess, main queries and, of course, the upside with the queries. I'll start with the upside. The Pies did struggle with clearances in 2022, so his spot in the Pies engine room is obviously going to be crucial, and thus will be given prime opportunity. So there's no query there like in 2022, or unlike in 2022 when he struggled for CBA time at the Hawks under Sam Mitchell. Was taken out of the engine room there and really struggled, didn't play his natural game, didn't have the dinky 1-2 handballs and whatnot, and contested possessions, which really is what he builds his SuperCoach and fantasy game off, more so SuperCoach. But, the main query, and it always is this, and he does have a limited ceiling unless he gets bulk possessions. He only had 9 100-plus scores with only 3 of those 120-plus, and he had 17 of 22 games in 2021 were 100-plus games. So he does have that sort of mid to high tier scoring in terms of ceiling. But again, only 9 were 120 plus scores, which goes some way to suggest only half the time he scores above 100. He actually goes big into the 120 plus territory. So he does struggle. And there's that correlation over those years there to suggest that, again, he's another year older. Even though he's in a different team, it's going to happen again, I think. I can see that happening again. There's a bit of a trend there, which goes against me picking him. So for me, with the verdict, yes, even though he's going to be a popular choice given past averages, but given that scoring ceiling is quite limited, I think that's going to hold him back from pushing into the top 10 and especially into the top 8 mids for me. But having said that, if Adams struggles with durability, which he has struggled with, especially last year, his upside, however, will go through the roof as a primary contested midfielder. So there is a bit of stuff going for him if that were to happen, but I think there's too much going against him for me to pick him, despite that value.
No, I think that's totally fair. I'm twig and throwing on him. I think he's one that I feel a bit more 50-50 with.
Yeah.
Like I look at him and I think everything you said stands out, like is exactly what I'm thinking. But to add to it, and there's no basis for this. It's purely just seeing what Collingwood fans are talking about on Twitter. So like I really can't base this off that. But I kind of look at it and think if I was MACRAE, my plan would be you're struggling with clearances. What you want Tom Mitchell to extract the ball out to the likes of Crisp or Degoe, who are more likely to run and carry the ball. So he's not necessarily going to get, I don't think he gets the 1-2 that he necessarily gets from the clearance, because my intention would be to get it out to one of those guys who then are more likely to penetrate with, they're kicking, they're running. So I don't know whether he gets the bulk possessions in the same way, like the 1-2s. So that's one thing. Second thing is are the Pies struggling with clearances based off their personnel, or are they struggling with their clearances based off their ruck lineup? So Darcy Cameron came in and did a great job. I want to say, like, I think a great job. I don't want to be too harsh, but sort of a
considering
great
circumstances.
job.
Yeah, he was thrown into
into
the ruck
exactly
without Grundy being there.
I don't think he's not a top ruck.
No.
And so that's the question that I would also have: is the supply going to be good enough for him to him coming in as a clearance player? Is it sort of what needs to happen first? Is it the ruck? Is he going to shark the ball off opposition ruckman, or is he really need the supply to come to him? So it's kind of, I guess, slightly egg and which comes first, egg or chicken, with that one. So those are sort of the two questions that I have. But then equally, I look at it and I go, they struggle with clearances, so they've got essentially one of the best clearance players to come in to help them.
Yep.
So it's hard. But in essence, I think, I don't know.
50-50 though. I must admit that I actually selected him in my initial team. Like when I went through, I've changed it a few times, as we all have, probably about 200 times for myself personally. But he was actually in my starting team. And then I did the numbers, had a look through, and I was like, it's the name, it's Tom Mitchell. And historically he scores well. But again, he's got a high floor, but it's just that ceiling that fluctuates and that lack of 120 plus scores.
Yeah.
Even though I think he's going to average quite well across the course of the season. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it that, he's value. He's value. Like if you pick him, he's going to deliver.
Yeah.
He's going to deliver. But I think depending on your structure and your lineup, for me, he's actually taking the spot. He would be taking the spot of LDU. And I prefer LDU more, even though that's stupid to say, because LDU's worth almost
not proven,
30K more, and he's not proven like Tom Mitchell. I'm just going off a hunch there more than anything, which you've got to do sometimes. I think you just got to back yourself. And I think that's the one strategy that I'm taking into this year is previous years I've been safe and I've been going with the guys with the name who's had a bit of grounding, a bit of assurance with historical scoring. But having said that, yeah, you could go for him, and that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a tough one.
Yeah,
It
we
is
can
a
speak
very
about
tough
him.
one.
Maybe it's something that we speak about because we'll probably end up going over and over and around in circles
Yeah.
with him. But maybe
Yeah.
it's something to speak about for the strategy episode as well. Like, because he's at that price point as well, around about those guys that could potentially break out. Do you go for him over someone like an LD or a Tom Green? So maybe we delve into it.
Let's circle back. Let's circle back to him later.
Well, Liam, that rounds us out for the end of what has been a pretty lengthy part one of this discussion on mids, and it is broken up into parts, yes, because we don't want to bore you all to sleep by serving you a 2-hour mammoth episode in its entirety. We did consider it, but we've gone back to re-record. You guys don't know this. I'm bloody looking out and giving you a look under the hood as to what's happening in the post-production here. But yes, we've broken it up into 2 parts for your viewing and listening pleasure.
Yes, and we've obviously touched on the Premos in this part, and we'll be discussing the mid prices and rookies in the second. So if you're watching us on YouTube, just flick across to the next video to continue on.
Yes, thanks so much for tuning in. And Liam, we'll collect our thoughts, recharge our brains. We've got to plug them in because we're running out of power and juice, and be back very shortly to go through those mid prices and rookies. So we'll see you in the next step. Catch you then.
See you guys.